Okay, so you know how everyone wishes they could see the future, right? Well, today's deep dive won't give you psychic powers or anything, but it will help you master something just as cool, expressing the future in English.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're talking about going way beyond like just using will all the time
Right.
and really unlocking those nuances of, you know, going to, or even the present continuous for when the future is practically knocking on your door already.
Yeah, and honestly, you'd be surprised how often even people who are, almost fluent with English, these are the areas they trip up on.
Really?
It's these subtle choices that make a really big difference in how natural you sound.
That's so true. It's like you can technically get your point across with just will, but it's kind of like, why sound like a robot when you can, be out here speaking with more style?
Hmm. Exactly. That's exactly what we're diving into. Like, imagine you walk into a restaurant and you're like, I will have the steak. People are going to look at you a little funny.
Yeah. I'm picturing like a whole scene now. The waiter's like, sir, this is a family restaurant. Please calm down.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're ditching the robot voice.
Hmm.
That brings us to going to, which seems simple enough on the surface, right?
Right.
But the materials we're looking at, they point out that it's not just for plans, it's for predictions too.
Hmm.
And I'll admit, I had never even thought about that distinction before.
It really is all about context. Like, if you say, I'm going to study English after this, that implies a plan, a decision you've already made.
Okay.
But if you say something like, look at those clouds, it's going to rain, that's a prediction you're making based on what you see.
Oh, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, though, because I'm kind of famously bad with predictions. Like just the other day, I was with a friend, and I was like, oh, it's going to be a gorgeous sunset. Perfect night for a picnic.
Oh.
Famous last words. Like 5 minutes later, downpour.
Well, hey, at least you're prepared to practice your future tense in all kinds of weather. But I think that actually illustrates your point really well, right? Because when you said it's going to be a gorgeous sunset, you weren't just saying any random guess. You were basing it on, I don't know what you were looking at, probably a little bit of blue sky.
I think I was just really hoping for a nice sunset.
But that's what makes it a prediction with going, too. It's not just out of the blue. It's based on something you know in the moment.
So it's like, based on what I know now, this is what I think is going to happen.
Exactly. And that's where all that nuance comes into play.
Okay, so we've got going to for those times when you're like, I've got a hunch about this. But what about when we're talking about something that's like basically set in stone? Like you've got that appointment card staring you right in the face.
Yeah.
That's where the present continuous comes in.
Right.
This is the one that always kind of messes with my brain a little bit, honestly.
Because we think of the present continuous as like, it's happening right now. But when we're using it to talk about the future, it has that feeling of like certainty. It's like already decided.
Yeah, like it's happening. Mark your calendars, people.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like I'm having dinner with my family tonight. Maybe not a, we'll see. It's happening, hopefully with some good food involved.
Exactly. And it's interesting because the lesson plan actually uses a visual timeline to kind of illustrate this idea,
Ah, cool.
which I think is really helpful for a lot of people because sometimes just seeing it visually laid out like that, it just makes it click in your brain.
Oh, totally. I'm a very visual learner myself, so timelines are like my love language when it comes to understanding grammar.
Mhm.
But I'm curious about something. What about those times when it's not like 100% confirmed yet? Like I might say, I'm meeting a friend tomorrow, even if we haven't like put it in our calendars or anything. How does that work on the timeline?
That's a really great question. And I think it just goes to show that even with these fixed arrangements, there's always a little bit of flexibility in how we use language. So in that case, even though you haven't like 100% confirmed it by saying, I'm meeting a friend tomorrow, you're still implying like a very high degree of certainty.
Okay.
That's barring any unforeseen, meteor showers striking the Earth, it's happening.
Right. So it's like a 99% certainty situation.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Meteor showers aside, you're probably good to go.
Eh.
That actually makes me wonder, is there ever a time when will the best choice for talking about the future, even with all these other options we have?
Absolutely. Will is your best friend when it comes to like those spontaneous decisions. Like if you're, looking at a menu and you're like, ooh, that cake looks delicious. I think I will have a slice.
It's that very in-the-moment decision, like I'm deciding this right now and it's happening.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about like banishing will altogether. It's just about understanding when it's the most impactful choice. Kind of like choosing the right tool from your toolbox.
Yes, exactly. And that brings us to what I think is the most fun part, which is putting all this knowledge into practice. And in the lesson plan, they actually suggest a role play activity where you plan a weekend trip.
Ooh, fun. I love a good hypothetical vacation.
Me too. And the reason why I think this is such a clever activity is because you would naturally find yourself using all three of these different future forms without even really thinking about
Well,
it.
that's true. Like the present continuous for those flights and hotels that you've already booked,
Right.
going to for those, sightseeing plans you're making. And then, of course, you've got to sprinkle in a little bit of will for those spontaneous,
Yeah. Yeah.
do something crazy moments.
Exactly. It's like giving your future talking muscles a real workout.
I like it.
What are some like going to activities you would be doing on this hypothetical weekend trip?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, for starters, I'm going to find the best coffee shop in town. That's a must. And then, let's see, I'm going to wander down that charming little side street even if I get completely lost. Because, adventure.
I love that. It sounds like you've already got the going to for plans down pat. And who knows, maybe we'll hear a real life use of the present continuous from you once you've booked those flights.
You're right, this deep dive may have just inspired my next getaway. But speaking of planning and predicting, it does make me wonder, like, if we could become masters of these really subtle nuances in another language, does that change how we think about our own futures?
That's such an interesting question. And I think it really speaks to something kind of profound. Because language isn't just about words, it's about shaping our thoughts and our perceptions.
It really is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, we're not just talking about, avoiding grammar errors here.
Mhm.
We're talking about how the way we use language can actually, like, shape the way we approach the future.
It's true. And I think the more that we become aware of those little nuances in language, the more we realize just how much power our words really have. Like, think about the difference between saying, I'm going to try that new restaurant versus I will try that new restaurant.
Okay, yeah.
They both have to do with the future, but saying going to, in that case, it implies more of like a plan, like you've thought about it, you have the intention.
Right.
Whereas if you say, I will try that new restaurant, it's almost like you're making more of a promise, maybe even being a little defiant.
Whoa, I never thought about it like that, but that's so true. Just those subtle word choices can really reveal a lot about, like, our mindset at that moment.
Exactly. And being able to kind of like master those choices, whether it's in English or even in our own native languages, it can give us more of a sense of control,
Mm.
like agency. The more we understand these tools of language, the more we can actually use them to like build the future that we want.
That is such a cool way to put it. It's not just about speaking correctly. It's about speaking intentionally,
Mhm.
about, like, choosing the words that are really in line with, our hopes for the future.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by doing that, maybe by being more mindful of how we talk about the future, we can actually start to kind of like manifest those dreams into reality.
Okay, now you're getting a little too into the manifestation stuff for me. But I see what you're saying. Like, language does have this kind of hidden power to it. And I think today's deep dive has really opened my eyes to that a little bit.
I'm glad to hear that. It is interesting how something that seems so like, basic and fundamental like grammar can actually lead to these really profound insights.
Right. Who knew that a deep dive on the future tense would have me, like, questioning my entire existence? I'm kidding, kind of. But seriously, this was really interesting. So for anybody out there listening who thought grammar was just about memorizing a bunch of rules, hopefully this deep dive has shown you it's so much more than that. It's about connection. It's about intention. And hey, maybe even a little bit of magic, right?
I like that a lot.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our grammatical journey, at least for today. So until next time, keep those future plans in motion, those predictions insightful, and those spontaneous decisions exciting. And remember, the future in all its messy, unpredictable glory is yours to create.